Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, 3 brothers have been convicted of a catalogue of rape and sexual abuse in the Yorkshire town of Rotherham. The court heard how for more than a decade, Arshid, Basharat and Banaras Hussain groomed victims as young as 11 before abusing them and passing them around for sex. These are the first convictions since a report revealed the shocking extent of organised abuse in Rotherham. 2 women were also found guilty of false imprisonment and procuring prostitutes for the gang. And just to warn you, Paul McNamara's report does contain some very harrowing details.
Their reign of terror lasted over a decade. According to their victims, these 3 brothers owned Rotherham. Arshid, Banaras and Basharat Hussain dealt drugs. They ran guns and they groomed and raped girls as young as 11, the jury was told. But tonight, the town is free of them.
The only thing I did recognise was the violence of it. I knew that was wrong, but I just got so used to it. It just came, you know, a normal everyday thing to be beaten.
The details of this case are brutal beyond belief. When the brothers finished raping these girls themselves, they passed them around to friends or prostituted them out to strangers. Arshid and Basharat Hussain are found guilty of multiple counts of indecent assault, rape and procuring a child to be a prostitute. But what the jury weren't told was that a 3rd brother, Banaras, had already pleaded guilty. Today's conviction comes 3.5 years after it was revealed that thousands of child sexual exploitation crimes in Rotherham were not being investigated. Many women came forward to relive their abuse in the hope of justice. Jessica was one of them. She first met Arshid Hussain, known as Mad Ash, in 1999, when she was just a child.
I first met Ash just after my 14th birthday. I was on some shops with a friend just local to where I live. And I had involvement with him as a child for 2 years. And he mentally, physically and sexually abused me. I was made pregnant twice by him. First when I was in the care of my parents when I was 14. And then when I was 15, my parents put me into care as they were struggling to cope with what was happening. And they was constantly going to the authorities for help. And they was ignored.
The Hussain brothers' uncle, Kurban Ali, was also convicted of false imprisonment and conspiracy to rape, as was Karen McGregor. Shelley Davies was convicted of supplying young girls to be victims. But the scale of abuse in Rotherham looks far from limited to the 6 sent to prison today. A report in 2014 found as many as 1,400 girls may have been abused by 300 suspects. Authorities and police forces right across the country have been slow to react to the problems of child sexual exploitation. Figures obtained from the Independent Police Complaints Commission show they're now carrying out more than 150 investigations into suspected police failings affecting 11 police forces. 55 of those, though, involve South Yorkshire Police alone, and so far 54 officers have been named within the complaints. What do you say to those people that have been victims that South Yorkshire Police has let down?
Well, I've said it before, I'll say it again, we're sorry, right? We don't want to let anybody down. As a public service, we're here to protect them. The important bit is if people have let people down in the past, they need to be held to account. But just as important in a minute, we need people to have confidence that if they have been a victim in the past or they are a victim now, that they've got confidence to come forward.
For Jessica, her focus is now the future.
You've gone through all of this, gone through the trial. Guilty verdict comes down. How do you feel now?
Like I'm finally free of him.
Can you see a future now where all of this is just in the past?
I don't think it'll always be in the past. I think it'll always, you know, be there. But I do think I can move on with a future and make it a better one for me and my children.
Well, a little earlier, I spoke to the MP for Rotherham, Sarah Champion, and I began by asking her why it's taken so long to get today's verdict.
Well, that's the question that I think is most challenging for all of us, because These women, literally over decades, were coming forward with the most horrific examples of the most extreme abuse and mental torture. And how is it that both the council and the police would turn them away? You know, why wouldn't they take them seriously? And whatever reasons and justification, there is something very, very culturally wrong that this was allowed to happen. And my concern is that, you know, I know across the country this crime is still carrying on and will have been for years. So how many other Rotherhams are there out there? That's what worries me.
What needs to change then to ensure that survivors are listened to?
I think it was last week we heard the Met Police Commissioner saying that they were going to shift from a position of automatically believing a victim of sexual abuse when they came through the door. That really disturbs me because, I mean, that will take us back to a very, very dark place. Because, for example, if my car was stolen and I reported it, I wouldn't expect the police to go, really? Are you sure? I'd expect to be believed. So why is it when it comes to sexual crimes, and particularly when it comes to child abuse, why don't we automatically believe and then do our jobs and find the evidence to support or discredit it?
I think I'm right in saying that 26 police officers have been issued with misconduct notices by the police watchdog in Rotherham. Are still there some police officers serving who shouldn't be, do you think, locally?
Well, I think that the numbers are really high. I mean, they're talking about investigations into 300 police officers. There are 26 that have actually had sort of notice that they're being investigated served on them. And really, until we can get that addressed and resolved, either, you know, if these people are innocent, then they ought to be able to allowed to go on with their lives. But also what we need to do is, if there are people that have in some way been complicit, we need to get rid of them, because a number of them are probably still working in child protection. And how can we as a town, how can victims and survivors go to the police with good faith and expect the duty is going to be done when there's still a shadow over some of those officers?
How big a problem is there currently in the force? How many officers are there potentially who are serving who shouldn't be?
Well, I think that's the real problem. We don't actually know. When the J report came out nearly 18 months ago, the IPCC, the Police Complaints Authority, then sort of swept in and started to investigate. And I know that they were talking about 300 lines of inquiry at that point. What I don't know is how many of those were discarded, if there are more lines coming forward. But this is 18 months ago. I mean, you would expect for them to have been acting a lot faster than that.
You've played a key role in bringing these perpetrators to justice today. What kind of toll has it all taken on you personally?
I've played a very small part, and I'm really proud that I was there at the right time so that I could help some of these young women, and also that I've got a big voice and I could shout in Parliament and try and get some changes there. Personally, it has been horrific. Ignorance is bliss. I wish I didn't know the things that I know. And as soon as I started realising the scale of it, the thing that was most challenging for me was not the level of depravity that these criminals went to. It was the fact that when the girls were reporting it, they weren't believed. And still now, I can't fathom how a professional wouldn't believe these stories, because the level of detail, you cannot make that up. And that for me was quite difficult, because I have always trusted that, you know, the police or the council will be there to look after you at your time of need. And I was hearing from these girls that they weren't there for them. I genuinely thought I was having a nervous breakdown. I couldn't. When you have one view of a society and you realise there's a whole other world going on that you know nothing about, you know, the level of organised crime in a town that I thought was one that I knew really well, the fact that there were allegations of the police and the council being complicit in that, I literally mentally couldn't process that and felt myself starting to unravel. Fortunately, there were people around me that I could cry to, who sort of tried to hold me together, and I'm forever grateful for Jane Senior, who was the original whistleblower, who came and worked with me through that period so that we could give the best support to those victims.
Rotherham MP Sarah Champion speaking to me earlier.
I've been getting away with it all